could not script what has happened in the Mississippi State football program over the past 17 months. Acting AD John Cohen left to go to Auburn. And as we all know, acting head coach Mike Leach suddenly passed away. Now, factor this in. No athletics director, no head coach. This isn't anything I have to tell the Mississippi State faithful. They proceeded to promote defensive coordinator Zach Arnett to the head coach. And they hired a new AD, Zach Selman from Oklahoma. Fast forward to September through the month of November. She wasn't a great fit with Zach Arnett. It was just not a great fit across the board. I actually think Mississippi State did as good of a job as they could have protecting itself without having an acting AD when you factor in just how the contract was structured. I think they only had to pay something like a $4.5 million to move on. Maybe somebody can correct me, something like that. It wasn't big. Now, again, not some cheap number, but in regards to paying coaches buyouts, it's a pretty school-friendly contract when they promoted Zach Arnett, protecting themselves. I thought it was a phenomenal job, especially when you factor in they didn't have an AD. I think that's an underrated part of that whole circumstance going into the last 17 months, especially when you're factoring the promotion of Zach Arnett, again, when you didn't have an AD. Now, Zach Selman had a chance to go hire his own guy after the whole Arnett thing did not work out. And once we went back to his roots, he was familiar with Jeff Lebby from being the OC there with Brent Venables. But let that sink in. That all happened within a 17-month time span. Will probably never happen again in college athletics. Between an alum of yours, the AD, going to a conference rival in John Cohen, you get a new AD, your head coach dies on the job, you go fire the guy you promoted up being the head coach. The new AD gets to hire his own guy. I mean, you can't make that up. We'll never see that again. So with that being said, what would be a successful year one for Jeff Lebby in Starkville? I'm your host, Dave Shumate, coming at you here from the SEC Unfiltered platform. Remember, I've 8 years in the SEC in the personnel world and the recruiting department working in college football, but now I do media content here for us here at the SEC Unfiltered content or Unfiltered platform. Appreciate y'all joining us. But now, if you heard me, if you've listened to me, my other segment on what would be a successful season, I'm doing it on all 16 teams. I'm about halfway there. I always go over a couple of other things I would like to see if I was that fan base. More so than just your black and white win total. Hey, they need to go win 5, 6, 7 games. I want to, if I'm a fan, hey, let's dig a little deeper than just a surface level win-loss total. So obviously, I think Mississippi State is a prime example of that. And I don't think you can just judge Jeff Lebby on his first year in Starkville just off a black and white win total. I just don't think you can. I think you got to read between the lines, see some stuff on both sides of the ball in all three phases of the ball, offense, defense, and special teams. So before we get to just a total win number, and I'm going to give you that, let's look at some things I would like to see if I'm someone who bleeds maroon and white. First, I think you have to put an exciting product on the field offensively no matter what the win total is. The saying internally for Jeff Lebby, and if you listen to any of his interviews in the spring, it's showtime. They have it plastered all over the facility. It's showtime. Now, I think that's possible because if you go look at Jeff Lebby's resume, we'll talk about it here in just a minute, he's lived up to the showtime standpoint from an offensive standpoint. I mean, him going back to even just his UCF days with Josh Heupel, his Ole Miss days with Lane Kiffin, then with Brent Venables and Dylan Gabriel, the offense last year. I really do think Mississippi State's I think the Bulldogs are going to have a good offense in 2024. I mean, Lebby's put up numbers wherever he's been. I'm not going to go into the total scoring offensive numbers, but plays I like, and this wins in college football now, are explosive plays. And I define explosive plays through the air of 20-plus yards or more. I think Nick Saban does the same thing. But in 2023, Oklahoma had 73 plays of 20-plus yards from the line of scrimmage. Number 9 in FBS. 22, Oklahoma had 75. They had any more. They ranked 25th in the FBS that year. Ole Miss is 1 year in Oxford. Second is last year in Oxford, 74. They ranked 17th in FBS. His first year in Oxford, 2020, the COVID year. This is without having a spring, I believe. 71, that ranked 9th in FBS. And then 2019, his last year with Heupel was at UCF, 95, which ranked number 6 in the FBS. So score from far. We're making teams defend horizontally and vertically. They're making explosive plays, and that's big in today's game. You're not just going to go have 12, 14 play drives on people. And I know anyone who follows Jeff Lebby knows that's not his offense, but that's impressive, those explosive plays plays of 20-plus yards from the line of scrimmage going back to 2019 through his last year at Oklahoma last year. Then I think you add in Baylor transfer Blake Shapen, and I think you have a really good signal caller that fits the system. You could see it in the spring game. He looked real comfortable within that system, and he's won. I mean, he was the quarterback for Baylor when they won the Big 12 in 2021. I mean, Lebby has worked with McKenzie Milton at quarterback, Matt Corral at Ole Miss, Dylan Gabriel at both, I think, UCF and Oklahoma, all of who've been very successful college quarterbacks and still are. Wherever Lebby has gone and called plays, the offense and quarterback have produced at a high rate. So there's no reason to think he cannot replicate that in Starkville this year. I think you add in some weapons, I think, through the transfer portal. Kelly Akahare from UTEP. I thought he looked good in the spring game from going back and watching it. Kevin Coleman coming over from Louisville. And I think the key here, I don't know if they have it on the roster this year, but the Lebby offense really gets rolling when they can own the middle of the field with the tight end. Can they get a guy like Justin Ball, Cameron Ball, one of the Ball guys, or maybe a Nick Lauderdale? Can they get them going and be a primary pass catcher at the tight end position? Like I mentioned, the Lebby offense really gets going when they can own that middle of the field at the tight end position. Another thing I want to look at, going to the opposite side of the ball. I trust the offense. This is where my question mark is, and I think it's most people's question marks for Mississippi State heading into 2024, is can new DC Coleman Hutzler improve the defense as the season progresses? This is the first time coordinator coming over from Alabama, was in charge of the outside linebackers and special teams during his time at Alabama. I think had been at South Carolina before. There's going to be a learning curve, though. It's his first time calling it. As I've stated in the spring game of the offense, you could see the same thing about the defense from an opposite standpoint. There's a lot of holes. They could potentially give up a lot of explosive plays this year. Maybe some of that was just, hey, man, there's some familiarity from a scheme standpoint in spring. The offense knows what the defense is going to be doing. The head coach is an offensive guy, obviously, with Jeff Lebby. But I think some of that is holes. I think State does have some holes. The defense's youth and inexperience are concerning. But there's some talent there. It's going to be a little sink and swim moment, though. But a few players I think could step up. Isaac Smith at safety, Kelly Jones at corner. I think Trevion Williams at the defensive line. All are young guys who are inexperienced who I think could step up by season's end. I also think you're looking for a prime example here of kind of what I'm talking about, monitoring the improvement of Coleman Hutzler. First-time BC again with a lot of inexperience. Let's see how a guy, South Carolina linebacker transfer Stone Blanton, progresses throughout the season, and can he improve by season's end? Look, Mississippi State lost two veteran guys on that front seven at the linebacker position that had played a lot of football in this conference. They lost Jet Johnson and Nathaniel Watson. And to be fair to Blanton, he isn't either one of those players. He's certainly not Nathaniel Watson. But can he be a winnable guy by the time the Arkansas game comes to town? By the time Arkansas comes to town by the end of October. I believe that game's around October. By the time the month of November is rolling around, can Stone Blanton kind of look like he's been developed a little bit? He understands the system. He's not missing tackles. He looks comfortable playing within the box. Again, I'm not saying this guy has to be Ray Lewis or even Nathaniel Watson or even Jet Johnson. It just has to be serviceable enough. Do you see improvement as the year goes on? All these newcomers and young guys may sink early, but if I'm a Mississippi State fan, I hope they are swimming by the time November rolls around. But I promise you a black and white schedule or a win total. So let's go to that. Look, I think Eastern Kentucky should be a win here against the Colonels. I think this is a under-the-radar game here. I think this is almost a must-win for Lebby. At Arizona State, this will be Kenny Dillingham's second year at Arizona State. It'll be interesting to see how that team is. That's a game Mississippi State should win. I would be a little bit disappointed if I was a Mississippi State fan if we didn't go get that win in Scottsdale. They get Toledo at home, no slouch, but again, Toledo at home. You should win that game, you think. But every year there's some SEC team that loses the game they're not supposed to in non-con. Is that it this year? I don't think so. I think they're 3-0. Florida comes to town. First SEC game. Florida will have already played, I believe, A&M and Miami before this. So you're going to have a good look at what Florida is. Will it be real winnable or not? The jury's still out on Florida. I like Graham Mertz. I think they're going to be a little better this year. It's a conversation for another day, but strictly for this game, when they come to Davis-Wade Stadium, it'll be a tough game. At Texas, I think that's a loss. They got to bye at Georgia. That's a loss. Pause right here, though. I said those are two losses at Tennessee and at Ole Miss. I don't see them winning a road conference game, and I think most people would agree with that. Let me go back to that. At Georgia, at Texas, at Tennessee, and at Ole Miss. I don't see them getting either one of them. I posted on social media. What do you have more confidence in? Mississippi State winning a conference road game this year, or Vanderbilt just winning a conference game in general? I think it's a legit conversation. I don't know if anyone has a tougher road slate than Mississippi State. But I think they're going to drop those two. A&M at home, I like A&M this year if they can get Connor Wigman being a consistent player, staying healthy, because I like what they brought in on the defense with guys like Nick Scorton. So I think that's going to be a tougher game. And then Arkansas at home, you feel like they need one of these two. They're at home. New coach for Texas A&M. Sam Pittman's a little bit on the hot seat. Could be a big game for him as well. Remember, how's the defense coming around as November's approaching? I think they need to get one of these at home. So, I mean, let's say they get one of these at home and they win their first 3 non-conference games. That Florida game would be big. Let's hold that one right there. Let's say they get one. There's 4. UMass, you would think there's 5. I already said they're probably not going to win at Tennessee by. I don't think they get Missouri this year. I think Missouri's going to be too good on offense. Now, Mississippi State's defense may be a little bit improved by the time November 23rd rolls around, but I don't know what would be that much improved. Missouri's just ahead of where Mississippi State is right now. I mean, they just are. More of a compliment to Eli Drinkowitz, but I don't see that game being a game Mississippi State really wins. Maybe I'm wrong, but just right now as we stand on May 9th, I don't see that. So there are 5 with UMass. You win your 3 non-cons, split that up. That makes that Florida game really how you look at Mississippi State's schedules. You got to win the 4 non-cons: Eastern Kentucky, at Arizona State, Toledo, and UMass. You got to go 4-0 in those games. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Then you probably have to get 2 of Florida at home, A&M at home, and Arkansas at home. I think that's how you break down Mississippi State's schedule fairly, unless they get Missouri. Because I think they probably have the hardest road slate of anyone in the conference year. I don't see them winning in Athens, Austin, Knoxville, or Oxford this year. I just don't. I know the Egg Bowl is a rivalry game. Who knows? Maybe some interest, but as we stand, I don't see that. So for Mississippi State to get to 6, which I would call the successful season, because to my point, this whole segment is what would be considered a successful season in 2024 for Mississippi State and Jeff Lebby in his first year. I'm never going to say a losing record at 5-7 is a successful season. I'm never going to say 5-7 is a successful season. But if they went 5-7 and the offense looked good and the defense was showing improvement by year end, and not even saying they have to beat Ole Miss, but just look competitive in those Missouri and Oklahoma and Ole Miss games, I think it suffices. I think if you're a legitimate Mississippi State fan, you couldn't be that upset if you go put an exciting product on the field offensively, because your head coach is an offensive guy, put up big numbers wherever he's been. Now, I'm not saying massive number, 45 points a game like LSU's offense last year. I'm just saying, hey, man, we look pretty good. We're getting some explosive plays. Man, I love those 20-plus plays from line of scrimmage. Man, Mississippi State was off fit. They were explosive last year. I can't wait to see what they do when they get a full season under their belt or rolling into Jeff Lebby's second year. Oh, man, the defense, they were improving come November. We didn't win those last 2 games against Missouri and Ole Miss, but, man, you could tell Coleman Hutzler and his defense really took a step forward at the end of the year. You wouldn't be upset at 5-7, but I think to declare it a successful season in Jeff Lebby's first season, it has to be 6. To be considered successful, I think 5 suffices as long as you see those improvements, like I said, a good product offensively on the field. Coleman Hutzler's defense improves as the year goes on, but I think 6 wins. Not only is that successful, you may be dancing in the streets of the Cotton District. So with that being said, I'll bring up the schedule. I like what Jeff Lebby is doing. I think year 1, I think they're going to be pretty good offensively. And like I said, I think it's going to come down to the defense. If they get to 6, I lean towards them not getting to 6 wins, but I think 5-7 suffices, remember, but successful. This is what this segment is about. What is success? Can't say a losing record success. So I'm going to go 6 wins, and you add in those 2 key things to keep an eye on if I'm a Mississippi State fan. Offensive product looking good, which I think could be there, especially if you go back and watch that spring game. You see a lot of things you like. Just have some concerns on defense with Coleman Hutzler and that defense. I think early on they will struggle, but the goal should be, hey, by the end of October, November, we're rock and rolling. We're getting comfortable in what we're doing. But again, I am your host, Dave Shumate, coming at you here from the SEC Unfiltered platform. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Tell us what you like, don't like. This is SEC content 24/7, 365 coming at you all the time. Again, hope you enjoy this segment. You have a phenomenal day.